Segment 5,
Yes.
Iran. Daniel Gordis, writing in the October issue of Commentary, notes two events this past August. 1, Iran fired up its first nuclear reactor. 2, the Obama administration let it be known through a leak to the New York Times that Iran was still at least a year away from a nuclear weapon, and that the administration had convinced Israel that there was no imminent threat. Let me quote Daniel Gordis. The United States was determined not to view the working Iranian reactor as a crisis requiring immediate and determined attention. The news accelerated the sense inside the Jewish state that action against Iran would be unavoidable and that Israelis would not be delivered from taking action themselves. Close quote. Has Daniel Gordis got that right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with Obama, we've seen the Rhineland, we've seen the Anschluss, we've seen the Sudetenland. Now all that's left is the invasion of Poland. So we know what Ahmadinejad, he came to the United, this is after we...
One provocation after another.
Yeah, after we reached out, Obama sent him a video, we had a real genuine chance of some revolutionary democratic activity last spring, and Obama voted president on that and did not encourage people because he thought that his own unique profile would be so necessary to deal with a problem like Ahmadinejad, when we just wouldn't want a bunch of democratic people out in the streets. It'd be too simple and he wouldn't be needed. But nevertheless, we missed that opportunity. I don't know if it would have been determinant or not, but it was an opportunity. And now we're going down this road and we know where it ends. And each time that Obama said, he shook his finger and he said, you better do this by the G20, you better do this by the UN meeting, you better do this by the first of the year. And he's given about 4 deadlines and they don't matter. And now we get insulted at the UN, and I think it's pretty clear that Mr. Ahmadinejad is going to smile and say he has no interest in nuclear weapons, and then one day, sometime in the next 18 months, he's going to tell us he's got the bomb, and then
Victor,
that's it.
I have a question here from a Ricochet member, Trace Erden, who asks an interesting question. You were just talking about this moment of opportunity, and he writes, did President Obama gain anything by appealing to ordinary Muslims using the bully pulpit? Does celebrating Ramadan in the White House accomplish anything?
I don't think it did. I mean,
I don't think so.
If you came from Mars and you said, are Muslims still trying to kill Americans? Yes, Mr. Mutalab is. Mr. Hassan was. Yes, they are in Times Square. As you and I are speaking right now, headlines in all the newspapers that Muslim sleeper agents are all over Europe trying to kill Europeans and Americans. As we look at Afghanistan, if we look at the situation in the Middle East, if you look at the Pew polls of public opinion, I don't see any difference. The only difference that I see is that whereas we might have been disliked under George Bush, there was some fear that George Bush was unpredictable and maybe a little scary or dangerous. Now there's a sense that we're disliked and that we are very predictable and not at all scary.
The Sunni Arabs, and this includes a lot of rich countries, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, are suspicious of, nervous about, wary of the Shia in Iran. The ambassador to the United States of the United Arab Emirates, a man called Yusuf al-Otaiba, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but that's the best I can do, speaking in August, quote, I'm quoting an Arab ambassador, "We cannot live with a nuclear Iran. I am willing to absorb what takes place," close quote. So, you have the Sunni threatened by Iran directly. You have Israel threatened by Iran directly. Let them sort out the costs, the benefits, how it is to be done, but let them do it. We don't need to get involved.
Well, I think that reflects the majority opinion in the United States right now.
What's wrong with that?
Well, there's not a lot. I mean, first of all, because they're not going to do any, they're not capable of doing anything, and the problem is who's going to build.
Israelis can't pull off.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, but I share your frustration because you know that the moment we do something, that same speaker, as well as Saudis and Egyptians, will then attack us publicly for harming fellow Muslims, and then privately sending us a telegram of congratulations with the premise that we are sophisticated Americans, we're adults, we have to accept that.
They have to deal with the street, but let's all be grown-ups
and we're
about
tired of that. We've done it for too long, and so the answer, it's a terrible situation with only bad and worse choices, because basically this is the dilemma that we're faced with. Only we can ensure that they don't get a bomb. And yet, if we do ensure that they don't get a bomb, there's going to be terrorism, there's going to be chaos, there's going to be oil, and it's going to affect us more than anybody. And everybody knows that.
Victor, here's the big question in some ways. It's been lurking beneath everything we've said. 7 years of fighting in Iraq. And the newspaper this morning is Maliki is clinging to power. They're maneuvering. They still don't have a functioning government. 7 years of fighting in Afghanistan. Polls show that Americans want to get out. And we still don't have a clear route to victory. Bob Woodward's latest book shows the administration in total disarray, the president trying to divide the difference. China's rising. India's rising. Our share, Brazil is rising. Our share of world gross domestic product has been shrinking since the Second World War. So aren't we just in about the same position that Britain was in the middle of the last century? It's over. We're not going to be number one country, able to dominate the globe. Pax Americana was wonderful while it lasted, but we have to cede our position, at least in part, to others. With good grace or ill grace, we have to do it.
But that's only one half of the equation. When you mentioned Britain, when it ceded its positions in the Mediterranean or in Africa or gave up its empire, which it should have done probably. But the reason why...
Greece, that's where we get the Truman Doctrine. That's the moment.
It had to, though, because it made a terrible mistake, and that in the late 40s and 50s, it nationalized its steel, its automobile, its power. It became a social redistributive state, and that was why we got out of the Depression. And they didn't really. I mean, we got out of the Depression because we spent all this money in World War II, but then when the tab came due in 1946, and all of a sudden the world was flattened, and we were the only capitalist, free market society that for the next 10 years could supply goods and services and pay off our debt. Britain couldn't, because Germany, if you looked at Liverpool and Frankfurt in Liverpool and Dresden or Hamburg in 1945, it would have been one picture. If you looked at them in 1960, it would have been quite another. It would be like Hiroshima and Detroit, the same contrast.
Victor, last question. To ensure then, so you see a sense of possibility here. You don't see things inevitably closing in. This is not Greek tragedy. This is not an inevitable closing in on the United States that once was. To ensure that the 21st century is as much an American century as the 20th, what do we need to do?
Decline is a choice. It always is by every society. When Rome fell apart in the 5th century, its enemies were just a fraction of what they were during the Punic War 600 years earlier. What we need to do is to ensure that we're a meritocratic state and that people advance or fail according to their skill, their hard work, their ambition, and their knowledge and skill expertise. And we have to have a transparent, lawful society. We have to have a dynamic economy. And if we decide that we are no longer an equality of opportunity society, but we're going to be an equality of result, and you look at where that leads to, whether it's Venezuela, Cuba, the EU, Greece, or the pernicious forms in the former Eastern Europe, it leads nowhere to serfdom. So that's the real question. The United States has got everything it needs. It's got a large population. It's the only truly multiracial successful state in the world. It's got a wonderful constitution. We inherited infrastructure and expertise and traditions from our forefathers. However, if we think that we're not going to be good unless we're perfect, and we're going to socially engineer predetermined results about human nature, and we're going to do this with a technocratic class like Plato's overseers or guardians, and we're going to have an all-powerful monolithic state that's going to direct our lives and destroy American initiative, then yeah, we're going to end up like England about 1950. It's inevitable.
Victor Davis Hanson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Peter Robinson for Uncommon Knowledge and the Hoover Institution. Thanks for joining us.